Hello and welcome to Who's On Next, the podcast that comes in 41 different flavors. Today I have with me a man who's been working in animation and visual effects for over 30 years on things like The Iron Giant, Ratatouille, Osmosis Jones, and many other films. It is Michel Gagne.
Hey, nice to be here.
It's just nice to have you here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty good. A little cold because our furnace crapped out, so it's kind of it's pretty cold in the house. But besides that, I'm doing good.
Where are you located exactly?
Washington State,
Okay, yeah. I have a friend up in Seattle, and she was telling me it's really cold right there.
right?
I also have a friend in Oregon, and she's told me it's been below freezing the last like 2, 3 days.
Right. It's in the 40s, so but it's in the 50s inside. So, but somebody's working on my furnace right now as we speak, and they said it should be back on in about an hour. So,
That should be good. So you should be warmed up by the end of the podcast, most likely.
yes, yes.
So I say, what is it that got you into the animation industry?
Uh, I always I grew up with Star Wars, the original Star Wars, and I wanted to work in special effects right then and there when I saw the movie. I mean, I must have been what was it, 77? So I must have been 12 years old. And I just got interested in movies, and then I saw Secret of Nim, and that kind of like hit the nerve with me with special effects and animation. So I'm like, yeah, this is the career for me. So I I found out about this school in Toronto called Sheridan College, which was an animation school, and ended up going there for 3 years. And I mean, my only goal when I was in school was to get a job working for Don Bluth. So I did a short film while I was there. And after I finished school, I flew to California and when knocking at Don Bluth Studios' door, uninvited, unannounced, with a VHS tape of my short film. And I talked to the receptionist and I said, hey, I just spent like a year doing this short film. I want to show it to Don Bluth. And she was kind of like, well, you can't just walk in here and ask to see Don Bluth. That's insane. And so I'm like, well, but come on, man. I said, I spent a year doing this film and stuff. And she's like, oh, you've got to, where are you from? I said, I'm from Canada. She said, do you even have a visa to work in the US? I said, no, I don't. And she said, well, then you can't even work here. And so she's like, and I'm begging her. So finally I gave her the tape in her hand and I'm like nearly crying at this point. I said, I am begging you, please show this to Don Bluth. And I'm just going to leave right now, but you have to show it to Don. And I walked out, and about a week later, I got a phone call from the head of animation at Don Bluth. I was back in Toronto at that point. That's where I was living at the time. And I got a call from John Pomeroy, who was the head of animation at Don Bluth, and he said, "Hey, just want to let you know that our receptionist came with a tape in our office while me and Don were here, and she made us look at your film. So I said, I want you to thank her because now we're offering you a job. And
Wow.
that's how I started. And that was on an American Tail. So I worked on it was I just came in at the very end on American Tail. So I was only on the movie for about 6 weeks. And then I transitioned to Land Before Time after that. And that's uh, on American Tail, I was like an assistant. And I started as an assistant on Land Before Time for a few months, and then I was promoted to character animator after about 3 or 4 months, and that was the beginning of my career.
So literally within like 2 years, you went from just being assistant animator on American Tail to being a full-time animator on Land Before
No, in
Time.
about 6 months.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it is interesting because you know I was telling my friends and stuff like my goal in life. I said, I want to work for either George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, or Don Bluth. Those were my idol. And at the age of 21, I'm an animator on Land Before Time, which was produced by Steven Spielberg and George Lucas and directed by Don Bluth. So it's kind of like, whoa.
So
Oh,
So when American Tail was wrapping up production, were they working on Land Before Time at the same time, or
Yes, they
okay?
were. They weren't ready for animation, I believe, when I got there. They were kind of finishing storyboards and designs and stuff. They might have started some of the animation. I'm not really sure. Um, and but I was assigned to Linda Miller, which who was my directing animator, and I helped her finish a few scenes on American Tail, and then we transitioned to Land Before Time. But I was in California for a brief amount of time because they ended up moving the entire studio to Ireland in at the end of 1986. So I got there I think in August 86, and by December 86 we moved the whole studio to Ireland. So I was in Ireland for almost 4 years, working on a bunch of pictures, and then I came back and spent another 2 years working for Don Bluth back in California. So I spent like about 6 years working for Don Bluth altogether.
Yeah, because I noticed it's like according, I mean, IMDb sometimes isn't 100% accurate, but it seemed like because it was Rockadoodle, Troll in Central Park, Thumbelina, Land Before Time, All Dogs, and American Tail.
Yes.
And what is it that made it? Because it says with Rockadoodle and Troll in Central Park in those films, it says special effects or visual effects animator. Now, was that the transition from being character animation to visual effects?
Yeah, I was a character animator on Land Before Time and All Dogs Go to Heaven. And after All Dogs Go to Heaven, I just kind of got tired of doing character animation. I wanted to do special effects. I've always been like a fan of special effects, and special effects was always the very first thing I wanted to do in my career. So I ended up becoming a character animator, but that wasn't really my first choice. I was always more into the special effects aspect of things. But it was a really, really good training to do character animation because it really forced me to improve my drawing skills, and also, you know, you probably know I'm doing a feature film right now, and I'm single-handedly animating the entire film myself, and so there's a lot of character animation in the film. So I you know, this training I got at Bluth was is great. Now I'm really using all the skills that I've learned working under Linda Miller and working under Don Bluth.
And I guess what was it like working under Don Bluth, given that he's become kind of this legend director
Hmm.
for such a long period. I have his book, and he's now just become, I'd say in the last like 15, 20 years, a lot of people have now considered him like a legend, like just a god among animation with the stuff he did in such a short period.
You know, it was you know, when you're working on the pictures, you don't really think about that. All you think about is your scene and
Right.
getting the work
Yeah.
done, and you know, so it's all in hindsight. You know, it's kind of like working on a good movie or a bad movie is almost the same thing in a way. It's only at the end that you go, oh yeah, that was a great movie, or you look at it and go, oh, you know, that was a miss. So, you know, I was more concerned about getting my footage out and getting my scenes, and Don was great. I mean, we used to have meetings every couple of weeks with Don, and he would just talk to us, and you know, he was very good at like uh, getting us all like pepped up and you know excited. So he was a nice guy, and he was very friendly, you know.
Yeah, because Land Before Time, I've had for several years was it still is. It's my favorite film of all time. Is Land
Oh
Before
wow,
Time. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie. It's like probably like just everything about that movie I think is just absolutely perfect. But
nice.
I've always been intrigued because for a long time, and I think even Don talked about this a couple years ago, there's a I guess a lot of footage that has never been seen or I guess never got officially
It's the best part of the
released.
film.
Yeah.
It's the best part of the film.
Yeah.
It was like 9 minutes, I think, and it was truly the best part of the film. It's I couldn't believe what, I mean, we had a screening with all that footage in, and almost everyone said that was the best, that big, terrifying chase was the best part of the film, and it ended up being cut. And that was my favorite part of the film. So
Did you
it
work
was
on
really scary.
did you work on any of that lost footage?
I think I worked on one scene that was cut. Um, but some people got a lot of stuff cut off. So a lot of their work was cut off, but I didn't. I think I had one scene that ended up on the cutting floor.
Yeah.
But oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, you say your thing.
I don't have any more to say. Well, I do have more to say, but
Yeah, because he was at a convention I went to last year, and somebody had
uh-huh.
asked him about it at the Q&A, and I think he had it had always not been known if the footage still existed or not, and I guess it's still not 100% known. But Bluth, I think, had said that he's fairly certain the footage is lost forever because I think it was held by someone in I think it was held in the Europe studio, if I
I
remember.
don't know. Yeah, it's a crime. Well, one of the problems is that it was that footage was going to raise the rating from a G to a PG, and they really wanted a G rating. So, um, and I mean, it was pretty terrifying. I mean, we were kind of all shocked how terrifying that extra footage was, but it's too bad. It's
Was
too
it
bad it got caught.
Was it just part of the climax, or was it more? Because I know it
No, it
involved the
wasn't. It
T
wasn't in. It
Rex.
wasn't even in the climax. It was towards the. I think it was in the first third of the film.
Yeah, because I know some of it was part of the fight with Littlefoot's mother. That's like the one thing I'm aware of with
Well,
the scenes.
the thing that I remember being cut was that big chase with the Rex. There's a little bit left of it, but it used to go on and on and on. It was a really long chase and very terrifying. And now it's just a little snippet in the film. But
I,
um,
I guess the thing I've always been interested in with the visual effects for a lot of films during that period, and even in the early 2000s, late 90s, how do you visualize abstract imagery for things
mm,
like explosions or fire or magic? How do you visualize something like
I
that?
mean, I started my career like when got into effects, I looked at a lot of live action references, and and it's about design, having a good design sense, you know, how to compose your drawings, eh, there's the golden rule of divisions and stuff, how you divide stuff, like it's all over nature. I mean, if you can assimilate that kind of thinking, it just comes naturally, and you start designing the shapes where it looks good. But you grab inspirations everywhere. I mean, I remember when Akira came out, and we had a screening at the studio. I don't know if it was a screening or if it was a videotape or something, but I remember we all sat down and were watching that, and it was like, oh wow, this is great. This is a new way of doing effects, and we're all like, so we're all kind of uh, being influenced by that, and I was influenced by anime early in my career, and I mean, everything you see influences you, and it's just you start processing this in your brain, and you know it's hard. I mean, I'm very much of a gut person, so I go in my gut, so I don't really analyze the stuff too much in my head. I just whatever looks good to me, so.
Yeah, because one
And
of
you
the
listen you listen to the director too. The directors will usually give you like some kind of I mean, sometimes they won't. If it's a naturalistic effect, usually they leave you to your own device. But if it's a specific effect, like for example, some of the work I did on Iron Giant, like Brad Bird had very, very definite ideas on how the effects look. So, and sometimes I get no guidance for the effects. Sometimes I get very, very specific guidance. So it depends who's the director and what the scene is.
was the same with because he also did Ratatouille, and
Hmm.
you did one of the really iconic scenes of the movie when he's tasting the food for the first time and the
Hmm.
flutters of images and effects pop on screen. Was that kind of the same thing, or was that more creative freedom with how that looked?
Well, I mean, that bit on Ratatouille happened in a kind of a funny way. I was working on a short film called Sensology. It was an abstract short film that what I was trying to do is I had this soundtrack, this very weird experimental jazz soundtrack, and I was trying to do a synesthetic experience of the music. So trying to put visuals to this crazy music. And on my website, I let people know I was working on it, and I put like the first 9 seconds of the short film online. And shortly after that, I mean, literally within a couple of weeks, I get a call from Pixar, and I answered the phone. Says, "Oh, we have Brad Bird here on the line for you." So I talked to Brad, and he's like, "Hey, I just saw you the short film you did, and I have this scene in Ratatouille that's like that would be totally perfect for you, like in the style of the short film you're doing and stuff." So we ended up talking, and I said, "Yeah, it sounds great." So Brad kind of left me to my own device, but he would have really good feedback. And the way we did it is at first I did some storyboards, so he could see where I was going to go with the stuff, and then so I sent him the storyboards. Once we had the storyboards kind of approved, we send them to the whoever was doing the music, Mike, what's his name? I can't remember. But we sent it to the music composer, and he was inspired by the storyboard, so he did the pieces of music. And then I got the music back, and then from there I kind of animated all the synesthesia from that. And Brad still had specific things, like for example, like during the strawberry, you can see these little circle kind of expanding. And Brad's note was, "Oh, the circles, they look too perfect. I want them to wobble a little bit." And so, so I had to kind of build this kind of little randomness in the circle so it wouldn't be so mechanical. So he was very concerned about not looking too digital. And I mean, all those effects were actually hand drawn, believe it or not. It was done really old school. Like that sequence was actually hand drawn on paper for me, all the effects, and I scanned that and then I processed the images uh, using a software called Animo. But the actual animation was all done on paper.
I also love looking at IMDb. It specifically says animator tasting for
Right.
for that
Yeah,
for
my credit on the film was very, very odd. It was kind of like it was I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think it was like tasting animation or some weird thing. Like it's very weird. It's like if you hadn't seen the film and you just look at the credit, you'd be like, "What? What is this?"
he
Doesn't make any
animated
sense.
them chewing like that
Right.
kind of thing.
Right. 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 I mean, it's like it wouldn't really make any sense, but
I guess what has been of everything you've worked on, what was one of the hardest jobs you had?
well, the hardest job I've had by far is me right now trying to do a feature film uh, and animate the entire feature film because I'm doing all the character animation, all the layouts, all the storyboards, all the effects animation, all the compositing, all the coloring, all the, so that's an insane challenge that I'm giving myself. So that's definitely the hardest thing I've ever done. I'd say prior to that was probably my video game, Insane Twisted Shadow Planet. I spent almost 5, 6 years on that. It was an insane challenge again, trying to get it financed, uh, put a team together, you know, um, pitching, going up and down the West Coast and going and pitching to all the game studios and stuff. So that was I mean, it was an insane challenge to do the game, but it was also an insane challenge to try to get money for the game. So it was that would definitely be up there. I mean, those are probably my two most ambitious personal projects I've ever undertaken. So the game was probably my most ambitious one up to the feature film, but now this one trumps the game by about 10 times. So, I mean, literally, it's like it's if I sat down, if I sat you down in my studio and I showed you what I'm doing, you would think I'm insane. I mean, it's like it's so enormous what I'm doing. So many drawings. I mean, we're talking like thousands and thousands and thousands of drawings, probably like close to a million, you
Oh,
know.
so it's
It-
fully traditional.
It's 100% all hand drawn.
My God. And how long has the process been? That's Saga of Rex, correct?
Yes, I've been working on this. I started animating on the feature 10 years ago,
Oh my God.
and I've been on it like 10 years, but I do take, I take work too so I can survive because uh, I'm not financially wealthy and I have to work so we can eat. So I usually like do, a year or two on the film full time. Then I go and work for 6 months and work my ass off to pile up as much money as I can. Then once the money is there, then I go back on the film and work until that goes away and then try to get more freelance work. And so like now I have been on the project. I've been on Saga of Rex uninterrupted for like about a year now. So I'm planning on working on a feature in starting in January for for you know, few months, maybe between 4 to 10 months to refurbish the bank account again so I can go back and finish the film. I think I'm about 2.5 years full-time work left on Saga of Rex. Then I think I will be wrapped up.
How long do you expect it to be?
The film, it's an hour.
Okay. And I guess for those that don't know, what is Saga of Rex?
Saga of Rex is like, it's I it's hard to kind of explain in a nutshell because it's been an evolving project. I actually I was at a conference a couple of weeks ago and did a 2 hour lecture on the Saga of Rex, on the origin of the project. And so it actually started in 1997. That was the first time I drew the character. And the way it started is I had my production assistant, Scott Greeter. Uh, I, I was at Warner's at the time working on a movie called Quest for Camelot.
Hmm.
And Scott came to me and he said, "Man, I love your drawing style. It'd be great if you did like a children's book." And I said, "Well, I'm not a writer. I would need somebody to write it." And then he said, "Well, I'll write it." He said, he said, "You illustrate it and I'll write it." I said, "Oh, okay." So I kind of right then and there, I did this little drawing with this little fox facing this really strange creature. And I gave it to him and I said, "Hey, go write about this, and then I'll fill in the illustrations." So he said, "Okay." So he took the drawing, and about 2 weeks later, I brought him a pile of about 10 or 12 more drawings, all ink, and he's like, I said, there's more inspiration for your story." So about another 2 weeks later, I called him up and I said, "Scott, man, I'm really sorry. I finished the book and it's all written. I wrote it." And so that was the book, and it was published in 1998, and that was a 32-page children's book called "The Search for Meaning: The Story of Rex." And and from there, the book kind of went into a couple of printing and stuff, and then um, I was doing a show, Wizard Con, um, in Los Angeles. When was it? I don't know, but it was like a few years after. And uh, this guy called Kazuki Byushi, who's become a great friend of mine, came to my table and he said, "Hey, Michel," he said, "I love your work." And he said, "We're doing this anthology called Flight. And I was wondering if you would like to do a story for it." And then I told, and you had the mock-up for the volume 1 of the series, and I looked at it and I was like super impressed. And I said, "Well, yeah, I'd love to be a part of that." Um, Maybe I said I did this children's book like a few years ago with this little fox character, and I said I think I have an idea how I could expand this in a graphic novel. And I said, "How about like if I publish like a chapter of the graphic novel in every volume of Flight, so I could do like a chapter?" And he said, "Oh, that would be great. That's my idea. I want people to be able to do their graphic novel through flight. So he said that's perfect, you know. So for I think 6 or 7 volumes of flight, I'm not sure. I serialized my story of this little fox who gets abducted by this UFO, and it's an insane sci-fi story with like, and think of it as like Bambi meets 2001: A Space Odyssey, or uh, or somebody had like a good yeah, I can't remember. Somebody told me like another comparison, which I thought was great, but I forgot. But anyway, so I think it's kind of like that. It's got like this cute character with these sci-fi uh, concepts that are like really weird. It's a dichotomy kind of, things that shouldn't really work together. It's too weird, but uh, you know, in my mind, it worked together. And I think the graphic novel was pretty successful. You know, we went through a couple of printings, and I think Image Comics was pretty happy with it. And so after doing the graphic novel, I was testing some new animation software. So I said, you know what, I'm gonna use my graphic novel and just take like one little scene from the graphic novel and see if I can use that as a test to test this new software. The software is called Toon Boom Animation.
Yeah.
So I tested one scene and I'm like, wow, this looks good. I could do a film with that. So hey, maybe let's see if I can do a couple minutes and I'll pitch it on Kickstarter. So I did a Kickstarter and it was successful and I had it like set for 1, 2, 3 or 3 minutes, like depending of the stretch goals. So we made all the stretch goals. So I did like over 3 minutes of animation uh, and put that on YouTube. And at that point, I was like, okay, yeah, I think I want to do a feature of this, and this sounds great. But I put it on YouTube, and literally like 2 days later, I get an email from a company in Belgium, and they said they want to option the film as a feature.
Wow.
So I ended up working with these guys for about like 4 years or so, 4 or 5 years, where they basically just renewed the option every year, and then they work on a screenplay. And I told them, I said, we don't need a screenplay. It's all in my head. But they said, no, 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 you need a screenplay if we want to raise money. So I worked with this guy from Denmark on a screenplay, and we took us a couple of years to get the screenplay working where all the producers loved it. And during that time, I worked on video games I was working for Gearbox for 2.5 years, and then I did Spider-Verse and My Little Pony movie. So I was doing all these projects, and but then I kind of like, and I was waiting for a green light for Saga of Rex because in their mind they wanted to make the film with it was more like a 9 million or whatever. Like they wanted it to be a studio film with like a bunch of people working on it. And I was waiting for the green light at the same time I was just doing these jobs. And then I kind of got really sick of waiting, so I talked to them. I sent them an email. And I said, "Listen, I'm finishing this movie now. I'm going to be finished like in August." And I said in September, that was in 2017, September, whatever, like September, I'm starting full time on Saga of Rex. You have to hire me full time and pay me, or I'm not going to renew the option. I think the option was due in October or November, and I said, so I'm going to cancel the option. So they said, okay. So they hired me for a year. So I got paid to work on my movie for a year. I was the only one working on the film during that time, but I put together the entire animatic of the film during that time
Wow.
so that they could see the film like in rough form. And for the soundtrack, what I did is I had while I was while those guys were trying to raise the money with the screenplay and all that, and I was working for all these other companies on weekends, and when I was taking my dog for walks, I would download all these like songs from royalty-free website. There's like literally like hundreds of thousands of pieces of music that are royalty free that you can just license and pay a fee like $50 or $60 and you get the song. And sometimes they'll give you like all the various layers of the songs and all the stems and all that. So I literally spent, 3, 4 years selecting all the musical cues for the entire film. And I would create folders. I would say, oh, this is the theme for Rex. This is the theme for this character. This is the theme for this environment. And so I kind of musically like build the film like with all these folders. So when I did the animatic, the first thing I did was to build an entire symphony for like an hour. At the time, the film was 68 minutes. It's kind of shortened a little bit since. But so I built like this symphony using all these pieces of music that I had downloaded and was very careful about how each piece segued into each other and all the little segments segues into each other. I mean, it was a real like puzzle. But in the end, I had like a 1 hour, 68-minute piece of music that was pretty seamless, that flowed all together, and it told the story musically. So from there, I took that soundtrack and then I cut up. And yeah, and oh yeah, one detail I forgot is to build the soundtrack. I took snippets of the screenplay and put them on the screen in Premiere. So I had the music playing, and on the screen I would just have a description of what was going on. So that was kind of like in lieu of storyboards. I had words on the screen and music. Once that phase was completed, I just went straight into Toon Boom, started doing the rough layout, and never storyboarded 1 inch of this film. Just started doing it straight ahead, like all super rough, with super rough layouts, super rough animation, everything really rough, but just working on the flow of the music. And that's how I told the whole story. So it's very musical. It's almost like a Fantasia in a way. So, and I'm thankful for the Belgium company. They paid for all the music fees. So they covered those fees. And once I had all the animatic done, the company in Belgium got in financial difficulties. They
Hmm.
were, and we decided to part ways. It was very friendly. We just decided like and I regained 100% of everything I had worked on, so I didn't lose anything. And since then, I've been on my own, and I've been contacted again by other people for who wants to produce or give me money for the film, and I don't want to. And now I look at doing this film I want this to be a completely uncompromising work of art, and do it almost. The journey is more important than the finished film, almost in a way for me, and I don't want that journey to be disrupted by having to answer to producers or being constrained by commercialism in a way. So this is kind of like my baby. It's my walkabout in the desert in Australia, my spiritual journey in a way. It's more than just making a movie. And I have one assistant, one in-betweener who works with me. At first, I was going to do 100% of the film myself, but this guy, Song, had been my assistant for years working on other projects, and I showed him the animatic when I finished the animatic, and I was watching him with him. I was just looking at him like on my laptop, watching it, and I could see like at the end he's like crying and he's got tears in his eyes, and I'm like, wow, you're crying. Why are you crying? So this is so beautiful. This film is beautiful. I want to be a part of it and stuff. And I'm like, well, I said, Song, there's no money. I can't pay you anything. And so, oh, that's okay. I want to help out. And I said, okay, if you can tell me that you are doing this for spiritual reason, that's it. Like this is like, we are doing this. It's above commercialism. This is like really like we're investing our soul into this. And if you're doing this for spiritual reason, then you can come on board. But, don't think you'll ever get paid for this. This isn't a different kind of project. So he said, absolutely, I want to help out. So I brought him in, and and Song was basically a game changer because when I was doing the Kickstarter, I started doing everything hand-drawn in between and stuff. But then I realized if I'm doing the whole feature, there's no way I can do all these in-betweens. I'm going to die. I'm gonna go blind. It's just so much to do. And I'm like, and it's gonna drive me nuts because I hate doing in-betweens. So I was starting to develop ways of doing in between digitally by just tweening or constructing rigs of the characters and things like that, so I could have the computer kind of like do it automatically. Well, when Song came on board, I'm like, wow, I have an in-betweener now, so I can really do it old school. I don't have to do these. So I scrapped all the rigging, all that stuff I was planning on doing, and just went really old school, like an old movie done completely 100% traditional. There's still some shots in the film that from the Kickstarter that used the rigging and the in-betweening, the digital tweening and all that. And I intend to go back on these scenes and flush them out and replace them with truly hand-drawn uh, scenes in the end because I want the whole film to be really like uh, an old school hand-drawn uh, picture, you
Yeah.
know.
So, has there been an idea as to how you're going to distribute it once it's finished?
I don't even think about that. I can't, I can't think about that because, like I said, this is a very Zen experience doing this film. It's
Yeah.
very, almost a spiritual, and it's like as soon as I start thinking about like, people are always asking me, how are you gonna, you know, if I start thinking about that, it completely disrupts the flow. So I can't really, I mean, somebody asked me, I showed the film to a producer and he wrote back and he said, I'd be very interested in producing this. We can definitely get you some financing for this. And I answered and I said, no, I'm not looking for financing. I'm not looking for anything. But I said but having said that, once the film is completed, I'll put my business cap on, and then I'm going to try to make the best possible deal for myself. But I can't think of it until the film is done. So,
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's
I mean,
been
even if I still have like 5% of the film left, I still don't want to make a deal because that's going to put the stress on it. I mean, making a picture without that burden is so amazing. It's like all my life, all the projects I've done, I've always had deadlines and I have deadlines. Trust me, I have my weekly deadlines that I have to meet. I mean, I have no choice. If I want to make this picture, I have to have my weekly deadlines. And if I miss a day, if I can't work on a Tuesday, I'll work on a Saturday to make up for it. So I'm a completely 100% disciplined. It's and I've been working remotely now for since 2000 and 2001. I've been working remotely, so so you have to be disciplined to work remotely, you know. I get up in the morning and at 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm in the studio and I work my solid 8 hours every single day,
wow.
sometimes 10. And I have to do it because there's no way you can make a feature because I calculate, okay, I have like, I have to do 60 drawings a day at least, cleaned up animation. I have to do a certain amount of layouts, so you know, I have a goal, like my weekly goals that I have to attain in order to finish this film during my lifetime. So,
Yeah, no, because I've been like for the last few years, I've been really heavily noticing indie animation and like independently funded things have just been blowing up online and even on television, things like that, especially on
mhm,
YouTube the last like three,
yeah.
4 years. There's been so many pilots that have come out that have just gotten like tons of attention. There was
hmm
a there was a pilot that came out a couple months ago called Amazing Digital Circus on YouTube.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
funny that the first time I heard that was I went into my stats on YouTube and says like it was telling me like where I got, where you get the views and stuff. And one of the views like you got these views from this search and it was that circus thing. I was like, "What?
Yeah.
What?" And so I guess it people searched for this and it gave them one of my videos or something. So that's how I found out about it. But yeah, I heard like that's pretty crazy.
Yeah, no, it hit. I think it hit a milestone. It hit like 100 million views in a
Yeah, that's
month.
insane. Yeah, it's crazy. Crazy.
I know. I've just found it so crazy in the last like 4 years. Indie animation has just become this huge thing. Like it's always been like a known thing, but just like YouTube alone, just the viewership and mileage you get.
Hmm.
just with these independent productions online.
Right.
Because
I
now,
mean, you still have to find it, but if you get 100 million views, then that will finance your shorts.
oh
Definitely
yeah,
will. But it's pretty hard. I mean, like, uh, I mean, I don't know how many, but I probably have like 3 or 4 million views on my YouTube channel, and I've made like, I don't even know if I made $1,000 on it. So, so it's not that much. So, but if you do 100 million, then maybe you get like 100,000. I don't know. I
yeah,
don't know how that works.
yeah, no, and it depends on ads. That's like the other thing
Right.
too. But I guess another thing, because you did another short film in the late '90s called Prelude to Eden,
Yes.
which is another very very abstract, interesting short that,
Hmm.
if I recall, did I think you said in the description it was technically lost for a period of
Well,
time.
it was so it was yeah, it's so what happened is I made it on 35 millimeter. Um, it was actually done on software, so it was all rendered on exabyte drive. But because there was no HD, kind of like at the time we did it, I did a transfer on DVD,
Mm.
and and that was it. And then all my 35 millimeter print of the film all crapped out. They all decomposed. Like even
Oh,
though they were like I mean, 35 millimeter doesn't last. I'm telling you, it's insane. It's like after 10 years, it looks purple. And I had it I was paying every month to have it in a climate control environment, and it's still kind of all faded. So I tried to I ordered like the exabyte drive readers and stuff on eBay, and I was trying to like get all the raw data to re-render all the films or like get access to all the frames that were rendered, like all the digital files, and the technology just it wouldn't work. I could not get it to come up on any modern computers. So I was like, okay, so that's lost. I only have the standard resolution copy of the film. I have these all faded copies of 35 millimeter print. So, and then I had the negative was at Pacific Title Archives. So I had the negative stored there. So I kind of had them ship the negative to me, and then we looked at it, and it wasn't so bad. It was faded, but I brought it in Seattle, and then we did a digital transfer with that. And so I went back and I corrected like the fading just using After Effects and just kind of like fixed it up that way and was able to extract the HD version from the negative. So now finally like I have a good digital file of it that won't fade. But if there's a big EMP bomb that goes over the United States and erase everything, I think about that all the time because I'm like, I've been working on this movie for 10 years and it's all digital information. What happened if like there's a big EMP and we lose? I mean, a solar flare could potentially erase my movie. It's really scary. But it's the same with my video game. It's like
yeah, no, and I guess what was the idea behind the creation of Prelude to Eden?
Prelude to Eden, it's just kind of I wasn't really doing the kind of animation I wanted to do when I was at Bluth. I mean, I wanted to work at Bluth, but once I got there, I was doing, you know, uh, I was kind of restless. I did character animation on two pictures, then I did effects. I went into effects, and I was still kind of, I want to do more. So I started working on it on Prelude to Eden at night, and it was just kind of this thing that evolved. It was very organic. After Bluth, like I would be working until 6 at Bluth, and then then the 6 o'clock would come, and then I would switch gear and then like start working on this Prelude to Eden short, and it was a bit kind of improvised or something. It just kind of, I was literally like doing animation that resonated with me, and I was trying to figure out what my style was, if I really had a voice in animation that was different than Bluth and all these other studios, and trying to find my own uniqueness, I guess. And then I would do these scenes and shoot them like on the pencil test machine, and some of the other Bluth animators would come by and say, "Oh, wow, that's cool, man. What are you doing this?" They say, "Wow," and they're all excited about it. So I would get jazzed about it and just keep working on it. So what happened? It was like they're all done as a pencil test, and uh, I heard of this company called Animo. They were from England, and they were doing a demo to show how you could do digital ink and paint in the computer and then output to film from the computer. So they wanted to showcase their software. So we went, I remember it was at Universal City in a hotel, and we went there for the demo. And after they showed us the demo, like I was like, I think you guys are on the right track, but you really need something to showcase the software, and you need a film that where you're going to have all these problems, and you can uh, by doing the film, you'll be able to solve the problems in the software. So I said, can you hold on here for half an hour? I said, I'm going to go to my house. I'm going to bring my VCR. I'm going to show you this pencil test of this film I'm doing. And I said, maybe we can hook up together and help each other out. I'll help you design the most amazing software, and you help me finish my film. So, I did that. I brought the film, showed it to those guys, and they're like, oh, yeah, that's perfect. So, literally like a couple weeks later, we signed a contract, and they set me up in an office in North Hollywood, and with all this computer software and all this big scanner and all that stuff. And then I started digitizing the film, and I would send them feedback like every week. Oh, I need you to do this. And I can't do this. So please, can you write that in? And then they flew me to Cambridge a few times. Um, so I could talk to the programmers and to help them out. And I ended up doing, finishing the film with those guys. And that was at the time, that was like one of the only viable option outside of caps. But yeah, Disney was doing all their animated films with a system called caps. And there was really nothing on the market outside of that, and that was exclusive to Disney. So Animo kind of came in, and we used Prelude to Eden to demo the software to all these companies. So
Hmm.
I would be in the office in North Hollywood, and they say, okay, we have this guy from DreamWorks coming. You're going to be demoing the software. So I was actually demoing the software for these guys and showcasing my film at the same time. So it would usually end up with like I'm demoing, showing the guys how good the software is working and all that, and they would usually end up like offering me a job at the end. Say, "Oh, you want to come and work for us?" So that actually like propelled my career doing this short film, because I ended up, you know, uh, showcasing the software to all these companies, DreamWorks, Warner Brothers, um, Rich Animation. I mean, and they all bought the software because of my demo, because I was demoing. So it was uh, so that was really cool. Like, I mean, it was kind of like an unintended uh, thing that happened with the film that I wasn't really expecting, but it ended up giving me uh, a lot of exposure with all the top guys like in Hollywood. So Um, yeah, and it was cool. Once we rendered the film in 35 millimeter, I remember we screened it for it was like the production team for Space Jam, the original Space Jam, and we showed it like in the theater. We showed like the Prelude to Eden in the theater so they could see it, and they said, yeah, that's it. Okay, well, okay, we're going with that software. So it was a good partnership that I had with those guys, because it allowed me to finish my film, and at the same time I helped them sell the software, and they also like gave me a lifetime license to the software. So,
Right, and after
uh,
that, because after that film happened, you did Quest for Camelot and Space Jam. And Quest for
yes,
Camelot, you were the head of effects, if I recall.
yes.
Like you were the
hmm
head of the entire like. So I guess how did that work compared to just being the effects animator?
Well, I was head of effects prior to that at Rich Animation.
Yeah.
So I had like already, and I mean, when I started at Warner Brothers, I was recruited by Warner Brothers at the very, very start. That was way before um, Quest for Camelot, because I was working on King Tut. at the time, which never got made. And then I
Hmm.
worked on Bluebeard, which never got made. Then I worked on Shangri-La, which didn't get. So I worked on three movies before Quest for Camelot, and I was the only effects animator in the studio at the time. So it was just me, just experimenting with these projects that actually never got off the ground. And when Quest for Camelot was greenlit, then I hired a bunch of people. So and I was responsible for training them and stuff. So I mean, it was just sharing the knowledge I had acquired myself. So I wasn't much of a never really thought of myself as a supervisor that much because I like to just be the guy doing the stuff. And supervisors, a lot of supervisors in studios, they just walk around with a clipboard and, make sure everybody's working. Or just go to all the meetings and stuff. So once we got onto Osmosis Jones, yeah, I was supervising effects, but I was like the artistic supervisor. We broke it down into the artistic supervisor and the administrative supervisor. So I had one guy who did all the meetings and did all the footage and made sure everybody did their work. So he was responsible for that, and I was just like a creative supervisor, which is really what I wanted to be. I mean, like after Quest for Camelot, Brad wanted me to be the effects supervisor on Iron Giant, and I was kind of soured on being I said, no, I just want to be a creative. So I ended up being just not being the supervisor, but being kind of like the creative supervisor. I didn't get credited with that, but I was more of the creative effects guy who did the designs for people and like people came to me with questions and stuff and I helped them with their animation, but I wasn't really like I wasn't doing all the meetings and doing all the administrative stuff.
Right. And when Iron Giant came out, because there was a scene that was famously cut from the film, which was later added
Hmm.
later on. And now I've never known the full story. That the nightmare scene the giant has, was that actually in the original film as like rough
Yes.
animation, or was it?
It was in the animatic form. So it was all it was in the film, yes. And as a matter of fact, I was super excited about that sequence uh, back when we were doing the movie. And I remember being really bummed when it got cut. So, when they called me when I got a call 15 years later to say, "Hey, uh, Warner Brothers is giving us the money to finish the dream sequence." It was like, oh, I felt like great sense of closure in a way because and it was awesome. It's like the way we the way that sequence came up. I was actually working for Gearbox at the time, and I had to take time off to go do that sequence. So I remember like very sheepishly like asking Gearbox if I could have like a month off to go do Iron Giant because they were finishing Iron Giant, and I remember they said we would lose all respect for you if you didn't go finish Iron Giant. So that was so they were
That's
like,
awesome.
so they said take the time you need and go finish that, and we'll be here when you get back. So that was good, and it was the that dream sequence was done by Duncan Studios. I don't know if you're familiar with Duncan Studios. They're like
No, no, I'm
Ken
not.
Ken Duncan is he was an ex Disney animator. He also worked at Bluth way back, but really good 2D person, and that studio handled the that sequence, but I handled the effects here in my home studio in Washington, so it was a collaboration, me just doing the effects, and they did all the rest of it. So.
I mean, it transitions, it seamlessly fits in with the movie when you
Yeah,
watch
well,
it.
I hope like I wish they would just remove the old version and just put that new version because that's really the finished film. It's
Yeah.
like
Well,
there was and there's a couple of scenes too that were missing from like the diner as well that were added, and he fixed like fixed some pop shadows popping and stuff like that. There's little things, little mistakes that are fixed that nobody even knows about, but it's really like I think that's and this is not like a revisionist uh version like
Yeah.
Star Wars or something. This is the film that ran out of money that it took 15 years to finish the sequence that we couldn't finish because they didn't have the money. So
Yeah, because I watched the movie on Max not too long ago, and it's the DVD version. It's not the pre-signature It's the pre-signature version, so it's
right,
basically like every version that was released before. Which I
right.
mean, it's still I still love that movie.
Yeah, yeah.
I
Oh,
still
yeah. I mean,
love that movie. Like,
it's still good, and everybody loved it, like at the rap party, and I mean, we all. I remember when the film finished, everybody said, "Yeah, best movie I've ever worked in my life." Pretty much almost everybody was saying that. Like, this is the best one I've. It's all downhill from here, because we thought like, wow, that was so cool. It's. I mean, it's all subjective, but your favorite is Land Before Time, so I mean, it's all like
Iron Giant
subjective when
is.
you work
I mean,
on.
Iron Giant is also one of my favorite films. Not like top
Right,
like 20, but it is definitely a big favorite of mine.
right.
But I guess the next movie I wanted to talk about, which was actually a big reason I wanted to get in contact with you, was Osmosis Jones, because I am a
Mm-hmm.
very staunch defender of Osmosis Jones.
Okay.
I think Osmosis Jones is a great movie. What I've also stood by, that is one of the most visually distinct
Hmm.
films I've ever seen in my life.
Well, I
And
mean, whatever like people think of it, as far as like fun working on the effects, that's the most fun ever I've had, I think, just doing effect on a movie because the effects were insane. I mean, it was all like inside the body and it was like molecular fire and like, I mean, they all wanted crazy stuff.
so no,
So,
it's so like character design, the world. It's to this
mhm,
day I still say that is one of the most visually creative films I've ever seen. Like
yeah,
it is amazing.
I'm glad you like it. There's I pretty happy with some of I think like it's some of my best work as far as just doing effects. Um, it was fun. We had a good crew too.
And I guess I know I don't know if this was ever true. I know this is a thing that was going around the internet a lot where I think they said the movie was originally supposed to be fully hand drawn.
Uh,
I don't know if that's true, but that's a thing that's
no, I think I
persisted.
think I think there was always live action from what I remember. I mean, I remember it shifted in tone quite a bit, like and it was a bit raunchier. Like I remember like we were listening to the Chris Rock some of the takes with like massive amount of F words and stuff. So that yeah, I was like, what? Are they going to use this? So they weren't really sure what rating they were going to go with at first. So I think they gave those guys some leeway to improvise and stuff. So it was interesting to hear some of these takes with like all the swearing and all that. But as far as I'm concerned, as far as I know, I think there was always live action in the film. I mean, I was never aware that there was a time where there wasn't.
Yeah, no, because I guess another interesting thing is that I guess bringing up Osmosis Jones because this also relates back to Quest for Camelot in that you animated the deaths of both of the characters, villains
Hmm.
in that movie, which are
Yeah.
both horrifying,
Yeah.
horrifying deaths.
That's cool. Like killing a villain with effects is like I've had the chance to kill three villains with effects so far, but that Osmosis Jones was it was really twisted. And I remember I think Dean Williams, I think it was animating that last scene, and he came and he was like, because at first it was going to be done by a character person. And he's like, he came to me and he's like, oh man, it's like, and he's trying to, he was trying to like, I don't know what he is, the guy like coming out of the water and kind of dying and stuff. And I'm like, well, and I told him, I said, that should be an effects shot. Let me handle it. So they gave me the shot and, so I kind of like treated it as an effect shot, and I came up with something that I don't think character animators would have ever come up with, to have the death of the guy like
It's
being
so
being as
grotesque.
grotesque.
Like
Exactly, that's the word for it. It's like the character people wouldn't think like that, and in the storyboards, it certainly wasn't like that. But I felt like I remember like having a brief with Tom Cito, about it, and I said, so I'm going to do the death of tracks. So I said, is there anything you want to, any advice or any direction? And the only thing they said like T1000.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
what they said.
that makes a
They said,
that does make a lot of sense thinking back on it.
right. So that's, he said, like, think T1000. So I said, okay. So I did my version of the T1000. So it's
Well, it's like watching it's there's so many layers to that death. It's like his eyes sink in, his
mhm.
his head falls off, and his
Right.
like all
And
that remains I think is the tongue and the hand. I think are like the
right.
last two things. It's so I love that. It's still to this day, it still scares the shit out of me seeing
Right.
it. But
It was
it's
fun. I remember a lot of people liked it because I when we had the rap party, a lot of people came after the screening. They were like, "Oh man, that death of Drax!" Like they would just give me the thumbs up. I'm like, "Oh, cool, cool. Glad you like it."
well, I guess
So,
with Ruber in Quest for Camelot, what was the direction the same, or did you have more creative
no,
freedom with his death?
I have to say, like, the director for that movie, Frederic Duchau, was really hands off as far as effects. He really just, I don't think he was very familiar with effects, so he just let me do whatever I wanted. So that was pretty much kind of like, you get the character animation and then do some effects to kill him kind of thing. So it was, and I was doing that whole sequence myself. So like the whole end sequence of Quest for Camelot, I was doing all the effects for it. So I was able to kind of build build into it, like with like introducing the electrical stuff, introducing these different motifs, and then that kind of like culminated everything at the end with the with his death.
You know, because I believe you also was it Rothbart? Was that the other one that you?
Rothbard, yes,
Yes.
yes. So that was just like a nuclear explosion kind
Yeah.
of. Again, that was like, I think that took the director by surprise completely because that was not in the storyboards. That was kind of like, I think I was watching a lot of anime and stuff at the time, and I was like into like
I want him to blow
explosions and
up.
stuff. So I wanted like, I mean, it was kind of weird like to have this kind of nuclear explosion into like a fairy tale kind of thing. But the director liked it. I mean, he saw it, Rick Richards. Oh yeah, I love that. I'm like, oh, you do? Oh, cool, cool. But it was, it was a bit of an indulgence for me. I just wanted to do like an explosion. I'm like, well, I don't know if it makes any sense. This bad creature falls in the lake, and then suddenly there's a big like friggin' nuclear explosion. So I don't know if it made sense, but it was fun.
Like, because you also worked on, as I said earlier, there was Space Jam and also Space Jam 2. Now,
Yes.
I guess what was the work on the original Space Jam that you had
Oh, I,
done?
I did very little on the first one. I don't even think I got a credit on the
Yeah,
film.
on IMDb it says uncredited.
Yeah.
So,
So I was so what happened is I was the head of effects at the time, and I was working on Quest for Camelot. I was developing the effects for Quest for Camelot, and Space Jam was being done simultaneously. So I did one shot uh, on the basketball court. I can't even tell you what it was. I remember like it was some. I don't even remember. I did one shot on the film, and then uh, I was approving and uh, reviewing the other effects animators' work. So I was working on Quest for Camelot, but if because and there was two locations we were in. What was it? We were in Sherman. Yeah, so in Sherman Oaks they were doing Space Jam, and I was in Glendale. And so I had my unit in Glendale helping out on Space Jam, and I was responsible for approving, reviewing, and giving notes on the effects. But I wasn't really doing effects myself on the film because I was
it was a
developing.
very hands-off
It was
thing.
hands off. I mean, like I said, I did one shot, and then after that it was more like supervising and putting the stamp of approval. On the second Space Jam, however, I was very involved with the film. and I came in because I actually what happened is I was working on my movie Saga of Rex, and then I get a phone call from Aaron Perry, who was a producer at Warner Brothers. I used to work on Osmosis Jones, Iron Giant, so he was from that era. And he called me up and he said, "We're doing a sequel to Space Jam. We really need some help with the effects. There's a Most of the effects are being done with this Toronto unit, and they really need some help. So I went and I helped out for about 6 months. I designed effects and I took on the entire Wonder Woman sequence on
Wow.
the Space
Okay.
Jam. So I did all the effects for that one, for that sequence, and uh, and did designs for a bunch of other sequences.
Did you do any of the third act live action CG mix scenes?
I did, yes, I did some of the mix. We did some of the tones on that, and I did when Bugs Bunny dies and stuff. I have that reel. I should send you the link to the effects. That if you go on my
And I guess with Space Jam 2, there's always been something I'm kind of intrigued about because I know Space Jam 2 had a very weird production
Mhm.
in that I think there
So
were.
did Space Jam 1.
Oh yeah, no, I know. Space Jam 2, I think had because I think there was like a bunch of images were leaked from the film. I think 2 years before it came out, and a lot of it ended up not even being in the movie.
Hmm.
And I don't know if like the plot was reworked around during late in production. I know like people came in and came out, and I think when the film
Right.
came out, even some people had said they weren't even credited on the film.
Yes. Yeah, a lot of I think yeah, I heard something uh over 50% of people didn't get a credit
Oh
on the
my
movie.
god.
Yeah, a lot of people didn't get credited on the film. I actually people I work with that I was really surprised didn't get any credit on the film.
Yeah, because
Like people that worked months and months on the film. I was surprised. Yeah, it was odd.
I know that a lot of the images that got leaked, I guess like originally there was supposed to be referees for the game that were the licensed characters because there was like an image of the mask and the Wicked Witch floating around or something like
Okay.
that. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't know.
yeah, that's the thing. I don't know because I
I don't
didn't.
know. I mean, when I joined, it was a mad dash to the finish line. So it was insane. It was I mean, we did 60, 70 hours a
Oh
week
my
for
god.
months. So it was insane. It was like trying to get this film done. It was you know, it was a mad dash, definitely. I mean,
I know the original film. There was also a lot of infighting. From what I know, there was a lot of infighting with the director and the animators because the director didn't know really anything about
mhm.
animation.
Don't know. I wasn't involved with the director at all, like on the
Yeah.
first movie. On the second movie, I was involved with the animation director. And he was involved with the director. So we were kind of, one generation removed kind of thing. So it
Mm-hmm.
was Spike. I was getting all my feedback from the animation director, which to me was the director, and then he dealt personally with the movie director.
Right. Yeah. Because I know when that film came out, there was like a lot of weird controversy that came out again with the animators
Hmm.
and things like that.
Yeah, I heard a bit about that, but it's kind of when I finish a movie, it's like I moved on. I'm usually like on to something else after, and I don't really, you know, done, done, and I'm working on the next project. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I guess I wanted to say thank you so much for coming on. So
Oh,
a lot.
very welcome.
This was a lot of fun. And I guess what kind of advice would you give to somebody who's interested in getting in this field?
You have a passion for it. Have a massive passion for it because right now you don't want to do it too much for the money because the rates have gone down quite a bit, and you have to love it, and it's a very insecure job. You always have to hustle, and there's no security. So unless you get like a cushy job at Disney. So but but that can kill your creativity in a way too. Like I think it's good to stay hungry, because that kind of pushes you to always try to do your best and come up with new things. I mean, I like to put myself in a do or die situation where I have to always come up with stuff to interesting stuff to stay alive and keep my director friends happy, and
Uh,
I mean, I was like meant to do this, from an early age. I was meant to go work in movies and do animation and stuff. I feel like that was my calling. So I'd say, like, if you feel that it's your calling, do it. But if you want to just do it because you like cartoons and you're not ready to put in the hours and stuff. I mean, I can tell you, like, the first few years of my career, I mean, I always did 50, 60, 70 hours a week, every week. Every week. I worked like, I mean, it was insane. We killed ourselves. And when we're working at Bluth, I remember, like, I was working at Bluth on All Dogs Go to Heaven, and Don Bluth walked in the studio on Christmas Day. On Christmas Day, and he saw me and my friend, and we're working. We're animating a scene on Christmas Day. And he's like, "That's unbelievable! You guys come with me, and let's go have a real Christmas." And he took us, and we ended up going to Gary Goldman's house and have a nice Christmas. But we were working on Christmas Day. That's how obsessed we were. Not even taking Christmas off. But I'm not that insane anymore. But I work hard. If I have to work hard, I work hard, and that's just the name of the game.